Well, it's a beautiful July morning here at the shop, and I'm getting ready to go on another cross-country road trip in an RV. And while part of me wishes it was going to be in this Alpine coach from Western Recreation, this is going to be one of the harder videos for me to make because it's a little bit bittersweet and it's the end of an era for me. It's time for me to say goodbye to my 2001 Beaver Patriot Thunder. Now I'm already loaded the RV up with all the supplies and the provisions I'm gonna need for a couple day travel across the country. And you know I love to bring you guys along with me, and maybe we'll discuss what's going on. But safety first. We're at just under 171,000 miles on this beautiful 2001 Beaver Patriot Thunder, with a well-maintained and loved powerful Cat C12 behind me. And so along this drive, hopefully I can have a little bit of a discussion with everybody about what's going on. There's nothing bad. Life just changes sometimes. Alright. Our first stop is for another drink, but currently transmission and engine is about 192. It's 109 degrees outside on the 7th of July in an Arizona desert summer. I will try to keep you guys updated as we climb up the mountains. Remember, for brevity's sake, on a diesel, about 200 to 220 degrees is normal temperature. On an engine, 220 to 240, you're getting hot. And above 240, this is all Fahrenheit. You need to stop and find out why your engine's starting to get hot. You don't want to get any higher than 240 if you can help it. Safely pull over. All right, that should be enough to get me down the road. So why am I selling and getting rid of my 2001 Beaver Patriot Thunder? Well, now traditionally I tell most people that the average RV owner keeps their RV for about 3 to 5 years because life changes. And unfortunately, life has changed for me. Now obviously my 2 kids have grown up and they can't join me on all my road trip adventures anymore. So that'd be one lifestyle change. There is also the issue of this being a motorhome with a front door at the passenger seat and a very steep step well, which doesn't work with everybody's lifestyle. Now, to those that have been following the channel for a number of years now, you might be noticing that I've been traveling an awful lot in RVs and not my RV. So it makes taking my RV out a little bit difficult because I'm already on the road in other people's RVs. So I am discovering that I'm not taking the RV out and using it as much as I had hoped and planned on using, which does lead me to another issue. Maintenance. Now, I'm very lucky that I'm already an RV technician and I can do most of the maintenance that needs to be done on an RV. But even for me, it's been difficult for me to find time to do all the needed maintenance that the RV does require, especially when I don't get the enjoyment of using it. I've also lucked out when it comes to storage. Now, most people, when it comes to RV storage, have to pay for, you know, keeping the RV somewhere safe. Luckily, I have a shop which has a nice covered storage on it, which has served me quite well over the years. Now, it has not been an inexpensive storage fee because it does take up shop space, especially in the middle of the summer where I want to keep it out of the sun in shaded areas. But I'm also trying to transition a little bit out of my shop into a much more nimble and mobile situation again, without the, I wouldn't call it an anchor, but the expense and stress of having a shop. And if I'm not going to have a shop to keep the RV safe at, that means I'm going to have to pay for storage. And in the Arizona sun, it's going to be best to keep it in covered storage. So that does start getting a little bit expensive and outside my comfort zone too, for an RV that unfortunately I'm not using as much as I would like to use. And now again, I'm still not complaining about having an RV and being an RV owner. If anything, I feel really bad for my 2001 Beaver Patriot Thunder that it doesn't get to be enjoyed and taken on a lot more adventures than I'm able to take it on. Somebody should be using it more. The best thing for anything mechanical is to be used. The worst thing is just to be sitting around not being used or enjoyed. Now, when I did first get the RV, I made a video showing what a high quality RV it was when it was made, and to no extent, and obviously, I still believe that. During that video, I did point out that it had a lot of issues that needed to be addressed that I was aware of, but I'm also a big fan of having anything with a good foundation you can build off of. And really, the foundation of this 2001 Beaver Patriot Thunder couldn't be stronger. So that does take me to another part of my change in lifestyle, is that I've pretty much done all the maintenance and upgrades that I needed to do to the Beaver, and I'm kind of running out of projects that need to be done on it. And unfortunately, every single time I take it out and use it, I lay around thinking, you know, I could probably improve this if I did this. And then I just add more things to the list of maintenance to do on the RV that don't even need to be done. It's just upgrades that I think could be a little bit more useful. But I'm not using it enough to make it useful. Somebody else should be using it and enjoying all those upgrades. And speaking of a new future owner, I think this is one of the best documented RV motorhomes on the market, showing how thoughtfully it has been maintained and loved and cared for and upgraded. I've kept all the documentations of everything that's been done to it, and there's a great online video resource of everything that has been done to it to make it a little bit more enjoyable for the new owner. Now, speaking of the next future owner, I also wanted to make sure that they got a reliable motorhome, because the motor part of it is the important part of it. And this has a Cat C12 that has, like we saw, about 170,000 miles on it, which means it has been used, it has been loved, and a Cat C12 should be able to go hundreds of thousands of miles with no real issues. But I don't want to just hope that it's not going to cause a new owner any issues, so I'm going to try to do a stress test on it in the middle of the hottest time of the year, driving it about 2,000 miles across the country as kind of a final shakedown cruise, making sure nothing else is going to be wrong with it. Which I accept on an RV and a motorhome. That's a very high bar that we can never get to. There will be things wrong with it. There's still some things wrong with it, but it's important to have a few things wrong that are just ticky-tack nonsense things. Because if it's perfect, you don't get to enjoy it because you're too busy making sure that it's staying perfect. We should have a little bit of wear and tear on it, and it should have a little bit of things not working, right? So I've gone ahead and reset the trip computer. So we have about 2,000 miles to go. It says I should be using about 220 gallons of fuel. We'll see how that holds up. And it still says I got a long ways to go, right? Back to the drive, we can still see I'm running nice and cold at about 200 degrees on the transmission and the engine. And we're still in the middle of the desert heat of Arizona. It's now 111 degrees outside. And hopefully you guys can hear me above the dash AC, which is quite cool for me right now. I'm not running the generator or the roof AC. The dash AC has been fine enough for me. Gotta save the fuel somehow, right? I'm the only passenger in here. There's nobody behind me, so we should be okay. Now, another thing that has come up, well, it hasn't come up, it's been stressing me out for a couple of years, is that I have a few RVs in the shop that I need to get working on and get ready and get rid of too. And every time I work on the Beaver motorhome, it keeps me from working on those RVs. Currently, I've been working on the 2009 Cardinal fifth wheel and trying to get it ready, and I was really hoping to get it done before summer hit, but unfortunately it's July and it's still not done. I still do have the paint and body work to do. And then it's done. So we're getting close. Now I can also say with a lot of confidence, this 2001 Beaver motorhome has been a great platform for me to do work out of. Most recently, you notice that I used it as a scaffolding when I did replacement on that 2009 Cardinal fifth wheel. It was a perfect height to use as scaffolding while I did that roof job. And really, when you compare it to a modern heavy-duty pickup truck with dualies on it, it outperforms and outclasses those pickup trucks and was a lot cheaper. It's been a lot more useful for me because I've even been able to camp out at my shop if I've needed to, and I have emergency power with the generator and the solar that I installed on it. Now sadly, because I haven't had time for my motorhome, that meant I didn't have time for my home-built teardrop camper trailer that I've absolutely adored, and I did just recently redesign. Now, unfortunately, that means I had to sell that too, but my loss was somebody else's gain because they got a pretty good price on that as far as I'm concerned. Because of all the things I've ever made in my life, I think I'm most proud of that. So, like I keep saying, life changes and you just try to move along with the changes and adjust as best as you can, which is why it's time for me to let go of the RV. Now, I have also been finding that I've been falling into a lot more big projects that have been taking me away from the shop and traveling a lot more, which stresses me out knowing that the motorhome is back at the shop, not being used and enjoyed like it should be. And I think that's probably my biggest regret, is knowing how beautiful this motorhome is and knowing how much love it's capable of giving its owner and how much enjoyment and adventure it's capable of going on while it just sits at my shop not being used. It's definitely not being abused. I do service it and run it and use it when I am back at the shop. I make sure I do cycle it every few weeks or so. I don't even have to make sure I do that because I end up having to use it periodically, even if I just need it for an air compressor. Now, while I do wash and wax it fairly regularly with a wash and wax from McGuire, when I was on my last vacation down in Mexico, I did end up getting a full body wax job. And then at that point, I noticed that it needed a little bit more love and care on both the rear cap and the roof, which is something that I knew was desperately needed, but it was time for me to do. So I had to take care of that maintenance too. I haven't shared that with anybody, and maybe it's one of those things that I can share with you once we get to the destination. If I made a video about every single upgrade or maintenance that I did perform on this Beaver, I would have never got anything done, and I would have been editing video for the rest of my life. Now, this is a pretty steep hill climber going up that even in my truck I struggle with quite a bit. The temperature has dropped down to 108 degrees outside, and right now we're running at a cool 203 degrees. Just about the worst part of this hill climb is over now. We're now going 60 miles an hour. So this Cat C12 really did pretty well. Much better than a couple Cummins I've driven up this pass before. And we can probably go ahead and shift into 6th gear now, because we're going to be coming to the downhill. Looks like a struggling Lexus coming up that pass. So this 40-foot long diesel motorhome is outperforming a luxury sedan from Toyota. Now, another thing I may not have told anybody about in my video is that this Cat C12 is equipped with a 2-stage compression brake or Jake brake, which is going to be very important coming up because I'll be going downhill, and these motorhomes love to pick up speed. So having a Jake brake, a two-stage Jake brake, is so much better than an exhaust brake that you'll see on most diesel motorhomes. And I did point out in the video that I did make about it that this RV, when it was made, was called the fastest production diesel motorhome made. And that might have been true at its time, and that's just because the Cat C12 was an incredibly big engine that was put in a 40-foot long motorhome. So its power to weight ratio was incredibly high, I guess is what the selling point was on it. I've found in bumper to bumper traffic, my off the line acceleration usually outperforms most passenger vehicles. So if my family's following me, they have a hard time keeping up. But the horsepower rating is all over the place on the badging here. So it can be either 425 horsepower or 454 horsepower, which by modern standards is pretty low when 650 horsepower is what you're going to be looking at for top of the line. But remember, those are usually 45-foot long, heavy motorhomes. And if you guys remember when we did a transmission service video, this is equipped with an Allison 4000 automatic 6-speed transmission, which is a very heavy-duty, almost top-of-the-line transmission you can get, and it's not something that's put in every single diesel motorhome. Just like that two-stage Jake brake that I'm going to be using here on this 7% downgrade. So here we are, we're approaching where you're supposed to check your brakes before you go down a mountain, because like I said, this is a 7% grade, and I did drive a fifth wheel down here using a UD diesel truck once that didn't have an engine brake, and I nearly overheated the service brakes on it. So I'm going to go ahead, turn on the Jake brake on high. And the nice thing about the Jake brake, and most modern Jake brakes are like this, is that it will downshift automatically to lower gears on the transmission. So now I'm using the engine to slow me down instead of using the service brake and overheating those service brakes. And even though this is equipped with all-around disc brakes, which means they don't fade quite as fast as normal drum brakes on a diesel motorhome, they will fail pretty quickly coming down a 7% grade. And so far I haven't had to touch my service brakes. And we look at the transmission, we're coming up to 216 degrees on the transmission because we are working it a little bit harder, using lower gears like we are. But we're also coming closer to the end of this grade. So I can go ahead and engage the engine again and add some speed. Remember, when you're in an RV, you're traveling in a house, you don't really have to get to your destination as fast as possible. What you have to do is get there as safe as possible. So even though I have my engine brake on, I can still pass this semi-truck on the left safely. And I'm only going about 60 miles an hour right now, without my foot on the accelerator or the brake. And that's why I tell people it's one of the nicest motorhomes ever made. So that was one of the first big hill climbs coming up to the Mogollon Rim here in the central deserts of Arizona. And while we were warming up our transmission with the exhaust brake or the engine brake, you can see right here we have cooled off quite a bit. There's still one more big hill climb that usually overheats most trucks pulling fifth wheels in the middle of summer. They'll even have a sign that says turn off your AC and take it easy because you'll overheat your truck. And my kids do know that's true because I did drive a truck with I think a 94 Catalina fifth wheel that we went camping in, and I overheated that truck and I had to stop. Now surprisingly, not only was this a great shop tool in the shop, but it's been a great truck because I have used it to tow trailers around, and I have used it quite a bit as a moving van because of the capacity inside the living compartment right here and the basement down below. kind of makes most moving vans pretty pathetic. And of course, if we remember, the previous owner actually used this to tow their race car around in a pretty big stacker trailer. So it is used to hauling quite a bit, which is almost the purpose of that Cat C12 in the back. It's supposed to be used. It's an industrial engine. So as we just head north out of Rye, Arizona, hopefully you can see that sign right there. Basically says the next 6 miles, don't run your AC and take it easy, because it's quite a grade that we're going to be going up, and this is where a lot of trucks will have to pull over and cool off. Should be keeping a look at your transmission and your engine temperature to make sure it's not creeping above 240. Right now we're sitting at 198, 95, which is a-okay. Now another fun thing that we've been doing together with this 2001 Beaver Patriot is, I think, or at least I hope, I've proven that you can do a lot of upgrades to your motorhome or your RV and kind of do it on the cheap using really inexpensive parts, or even found used parts or trash to the more common vernacular. Now, it might look like I'm in the fast lane going slow, but I am going over 65 miles an hour, which is the speed limit here. I just don't want to get stuck in the right lane and lose all my momentum. Always, the clouds are up here in the mountains, right at the rim. So our temperature is still holding steady at 107, but I got to imagine in less than 10 miles we'll drop in temperature quite a bit. It's one of my favorite things about Arizona is how quickly the climate changes from the desert just up to the mountains a few hours away. Just that easily and just that fast, we've made it from the desert to a pine forest here in Payson, Arizona. I'll let you guys listen to the RV a little bit better now. That's how quiet it is on a good road. Now we're on a bad road. Now as we enter the town of Payson, which is home to the oldest or the longest running continuous rodeo in the United States, take a look at our transmission and our engine temperature. Already cooled the engine down to 199 degrees, and the transmission is running at 210 degrees. The cooling fan on this, because it is a side discharge radiator, is hydraulically driven using a thermostat for the hydraulic controls. And recently I actually did have that control hose blow out because it was rubbing against the turbo. Which brings me to remind everybody, as an RV driver, it's very important that you always be aware of your surroundings and your gauges. Now, I didn't notice any problems on my gauges because I was just losing hydraulic pressure and I don't have a sensor for that. But I did notice that somebody was driving up alongside me and holding steady to me. I thought they were kind of like dogging me, kind of giving me attitude. But when I looked past and in my side view mirror right there, I noticed a lot of white smoke coming out of the side of my RV. Needless to say, I was freaking out, and I was on a freeway, so I couldn't just pull over anywhere. My gauges told me that I didn't have an overheating engine or transmission, but what had happened is that hydraulic line that goes to the controls for the hydraulic motor for the fan had ruptured against the turbo. And you know, it was rubbing on a bolt, and so it was spraying hydraulic fluid all over the turbo and the exhaust. Luckily, the hydraulic fluid doesn't burn very well, and it only smoked. So the good news is I was able to get a new hydraulic hose made. In fact, I made 2 of them. I have an extra one now. And I was able to basically service all the hydraulic fluid. So I hope you guys enjoyed traveling up from the desert center in Phoenix, Arizona to rim country here in Payson, Arizona, as I explain the big radical changes that are happening in my life and on the channel. And I hope my rambling, incoherent commentary, you guys picked up why everything was changing and a few tips about when you're driving. Now, as we head further north up Highway 260 to that proper rim, we have dropped from temperatures down to about 95 degrees already, and by the time you get up to the top, I wouldn't be surprised if we're below 90. But that was a very fun trip to take you guys on, and I hope you now understand I'm not getting rid of my motorhome because there's a problem with it. I'm getting rid of my motorhome because my lifestyle has changed and it's time. I'll still say this 2001 Beaver Patriot Thunder is probably one of the best motorhomes ever made, and I think it's actually become a much better motorhome under my care, and hopefully the new owner will agree with me. Just like the previous owner did a lot of favors for me that they didn't get to enjoy, I hope the new owner gets to say thank you for all the upgrades I gave them. And right at the top right here, we've now entered Sitgreaves National Forest, and if we go off to the left, we'd find Woods Canyon Lake. If you guys remember, one of my very first videos was me enjoying a lake with my daughter, and that was directly to the left. Well, we'll go ahead and end our trip up to the top of the rim right here. One of my favorite overlooks and vistas in Arizona. All right, we go right here to the trip. We've gone just a little less than 100 miles. We averaged 5.8 miles per gallon, going up a lot of elevation gain. We're at 7,000 feet right about now. It says we use 14 gallons of diesel fuel doing that. We have crossed over to 171,000 miles, and I was wrong. It is 94 degrees at the top of the rim here. While my outside temperature sensor might be reading 94 degrees up here in the pines, I really can't imagine it being more than 89 degrees. Now, while that was an incredible trip that ends with a fabulous view out here of the Mogollon Rim Vista and that beautiful Ponderosa Forest, the chilly alpine breeze makes me completely forget that it was 110 degrees less than an hour ago down there in the desert. I'm very pleased to report that my 2001 Beaver Patriot Thunder made that arduous hill climb with no problems, far surpassed any concerns I would have had about it. Still holding steady at 203 degrees on the transmission and 192 on the engine. And while I, like most people, would like to believe that there's such a thing as a perfect RV, a one-time RV that you'll never have to buy another RV again, like I said, 3 to 5 years is the average RV ownership. Don't fall in love with every RV that you're looking for or that you're looking at, because life does change pretty quickly. So you might as well be a very thoughtful caretaker for your RV, but also the RV of a future owner. Hopefully the rest of the trip's gonna be just as uneventful as the first leg of the trip has been with the RV. And I can't wait to share the rest of the RV with you. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. Stay safe on the road. Bye.